How about that? Okay, y'all hear me now? All right, we're going to do a little bit of Bible study tonight, so let's just jump in here. We're going to go to, let's see, where are we going? We're going back to 2 Kings chapter 18, so you can take your Bibles over there. Pretty much, I think that's where we're going to stay. We'll limited amount of time tonight. We have our business meeting, so we'll call it done somewhere around 7 o'clock tonight. So we're in the King Hezekiah. I can see the end of the tunnel a little bit. I can begin to see this one, and but Ken's going to fill in for me next week. I'll be on vacation. Lori and I'll leave Friday morning, and so Ken will take care of next week for me. Appreciate him doing that. And then maybe another lesson or two in King Hezekiah's life as we finish up. But just some things to remember. Here's those Bible verses again. The last thing that we looked at was the beginning of that Assyrian invasion just a little bit. King Hezekiah had been so faithful, did everything that he needed to do to bring back the worship of the Lord. In the 14th year of his reign, the Assyrian army shows up. They're ready to storm the walls of Jerusalem. At first, King Hezekiah makes a boneheaded decision. He tried to pay off the king of Assyria, took the gold and silver from the temple, pulled a card from his daddy's life, and did what his dad did, and it was a bad idea. King of Assyria took the gold and the silver and still invaded him. So he only just disobeyed the Lord, and disobedience to the Lord never accomplishes anything good. And so it did not accomplish anything good. Then we have King Hezekiah getting his head on straight. We all kind of lose our heads at times. Getting his head on straight, and he begins to prepare for battle. He said, we got to prepare for battle. And so here's his speech to his army. He says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid nor dismayed before the king of Assyria, nor before all the multitude that is with him, for there are more that is with us than with him. With him is the arm of flesh. All he can do is just use his muscles, but with us is the Lord our God to help and fight our battles. So here's faith speaking. This is his faith speaking. And because of that, people were strengthened by the words of King Hezekiah of Judah. I'll go ahead and tell you, but they never had to fight a battle. They never had to raise a sword, never had to shoot an arrow. We'll learn more about that as we continue tonight. Then we have the Rabshakeh. That's not a name, that's more of a title. One of the kind of the main dignitary of the king of Assyria. And he gives this, we spent most of our time last time in this big long speech in 2 Kings chapter 18, and he's talking about how big and bad the king of Assyria is, and how many nations and how many gods the king of Assyria had defeated, and why would you trust King Hezekiah? Why would you trust your God? I mean, look at all the other gods that the Assyrian army had defeated. So very blasphemous. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And so tonight, how do the people respond to this big long speech by the Assyrian dignitary spokesman for the king of Assyria? So we get started in chapter 18, verse 36, almost the end of that chapter, and we'll bleed over into chapter 19 tonight. Verse 36, but the people held their peace and said nothing. You know, sometimes that's what we have to do. Hold your peace and say nothing. And that's a hard response sometimes, because we want to say, oh yeah, well, and sometimes we just need to keep our mouth shut. Now, they had been told, as you continue to read there, for the king's command was, don't answer him. So don't fall into the trap of the Assyrians. Just don't answer. In the verse 37, Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, Shebna the scribe, Joah the son of these are Judah's people. These are King Hezekiah's people. Came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and told him the words of the Rabshakeh. Now, the people being able to hold their peace, say nothing, not flee, not run, not compromise. There was no real heroic efforts here. We didn't have, the guy that pulled out his sword and go cut the Rabshakeh's head off. None of that. They just stayed where they were, and they were quiet. Is an act of faith, an act of trust. Sometimes God doesn't expect us to, do heroic things. Sometimes He just expects us to stay still, be still and know that I am God. Just to stay still, be quiet, and keep living by faith. In times of, so we go to chapter 19. Now this is Hezekiah's response. Another great response by King Hezekiah. Chapter 19 verse 1 says, so after he heard about this speech, and so it was when King Hezekiah had heard it, that he tore his clothes. This is a sign of mourning, a sign of trouble. Covered himself with sackcloth, again a sign of mourning, and went into the house of the Lord. That's what we do. That's what we do. We take our troubles to the Lord. In times of great trouble, we must run to God and not away from Him. But how many people do you know when they face very difficult circumstances, instead of getting closer to God, they run away from Him? They stop coming to church. They, they just kind of fall out of their church family. They just, we call them, I do this all the time. We call them, hey, we've been missing you. They start giving me their excuses and their stories, and I always respond by saying, and that's what you need a church family for right now. You need a church family to be around you and to encourage you and strengthen you. But this is the devil's way. The devil's way of troubles in our life. I mean, is this not what he tried to get Job to do? As Job's wife said, curse God and die. Satan told God, if you'll just let me hurt Job, cause trouble in his life, well, he'll forsake you. He'll disown you. And so Satan knows how that troubles and difficulties and trials can cause us to go away from God instead of to God. I know this is sort of cheap talk, but just keep it in your mind. When you face those most difficult moments of life, that's when you need to be drawn closer to God. And it is through those trials of our faith that we can be drawn very close to Him. So Hezekiah's troubles were bigger than he was, but they were not bigger than God. I've been there. I'm sure all of you could tell me about a time where you felt how that your troubles were so much bigger than you could bear. But that's why you need God, and that's why you need a church family. Next slide. All right, so actually that should be chapter 19. I don't know who made those slides. Vicki, get them right next time, okay? No, that's on me. That's on me. Chapter 19, so I said 18, but chapter 19, then he sent Eliakim, who was over the household, Shebna the scribe, and all these other guys. And where did he go? Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, the same Isaiah that wrote the book of Isaiah. They said to him, thus says Hezekiah, this day is a day of trouble. It's a day of trouble and rebuke. Now I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but just notice that, and rebuke, and blasphemy, for the children have come to birth, and there is no strength to bring them forth. It may be that the Lord your God will hear all the words of the Rabshakeh, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to reproach the living God, and will rebuke the words which the Lord your God has heard. Therefore, lift up your prayers for the remnant that is left. So the servants of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah. I'll stop right there. So the next thing that King Hezekiah does, another great lesson here, is he goes to a great man of God and he asks him to pray. Now Isaiah is going to do more than that, but he comes to Isaiah and he says, here's what's going on. There's huge trouble in the land. And so let's talk about the way he describes that. So let me say a little more before I get to that. So we take our troubles to the Lord first. But you also take your troubles to people who will pray for you. I do not understand people who will not ask others to pray for them. I won't name names, but it just happened to me this week. And a certain person, a member of this church, called me and said, this and that and this. And I said, why didn't you let us know? Well, I didn't want to bother anybody and da-da-da-da-da. And I thought, well, we would pray for you. But we can't pray for people we don't know. So I never bemoan people calling and asking for prayers and our sending out prayer requests through our emails and text messaging and making our prayer request list on the bulletin. I think that's kind of a biblical thing to do. I don't know, I may have misread the Bible somewhere, but I think we are to pray for one another. And in this James chapter 5, verses 14 through 16, I'll kind of just tell you what it says. It basically says, are you sick? Well, if you are, then call for the elders, which may or may not be an official title. It may be the pastors of the church there. And it's certainly fine to call this pastor and ask for prayers. But I think the idea is that you call people whom you know are in a right relationship with God. Because the Bible also says that people who are not living in obedience to the Lord and who maybe have unconfessed sin in their lives, God tells us that He won't hear those people's prayers. But it says in this passage that the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man or woman avails much. So I translate that verse this way. A righteous person's prayer at work is very powerful. So you go to somebody like an Isaiah in your life and you say, I have this going on. And it doesn't always have to be your ingrown toenail. It can be, I am in a spiritual battle right now. I'm struggling in my spiritual lives. I'm struggling with some emotions. I'm struggling with some mental things. I'm struggling in my job. I'm struggling in my marriage. But what do we tend to want to do? Oh, let's keep that private. Let's not let anybody know about that. In this idea that somehow we're going to be fooled and think that, your life is perfect and you have it all together. Like the rest of us. There ain't none of us that got it all together, and none of us have a perfect life, so let's just all admit that. And then we are struggling. If you come to me and say, my wife and I are having trouble, I'm not going to go, oh my goodness, what kind of devil are you? No, I'm going to say, well, let's go to prayer. We're human. Do you not think my wife and I have trouble? You be married to me for a while. So let's pray for one another. And that's what Hezekiah does. Now he says, now I get to this rebuke, verse 3. And I looked at that and I dug, and I'm just going to throw this out here, but I'm kind of a 90% on this. I think what Hezekiah means, he says in verse 3, if you look at that verse again, he said, this is a day of trouble and rebuke. Well, I think what Hezekiah understood, is that a part of this Assyrian invasion that was going on, we know that it was a punishment to the northern kingdom of Israel. That was clearly said. Isaiah, whom Hezekiah knows very well, and it's been a while, but you remember we did go through chapters 1 through 37, 35, before we get to the Hezekiah passage. And what was that all about? God telling Judah, you're going to be judged for your sins. And so I think Hezekiah said, a lot of the reason that we are having this trouble is self-inflicted. We're being judged. We're being rebuked by God for the sins that we have committed. And you know what? That's a good thing. It is a good thing that when we, go ahead and go to the next slide, when we face difficulties and troubles in our lives, I think it's a healthy thing for us to consider, is this a punishment, let's say chastisement, is this the chastening of the Lord? I'm not going to tell you it always is, but I am going to tell you it can be. And I think it's always a spiritually healthy thing for us to say, okay, is there something in my life, is there something I'm doing I shouldn't, or is there something I'm not doing that I should? And is this God's way of shaking me a little bit and waking me up and saying, hey, you need to get back on track? And I'm very thankful. Y'all hear me say that all the time. I'm very thankful that the Lord chastens me, because He is the reason that I can keep my life on the righteous trajectory. Now, sometimes I turn left and right a little bit, but I think I'm headed somewhat in the direction of righteousness. I have detours from time. And then the next one, he talks about the blasphemy here, and this is specifically, I think Hezekiah knew this, but he was calling it out to the Lord, and he was basically saying, Lord, I don't like it when this Rabshakeh and the king of Assyria talks bad about you. So Lord, I want you to hear them, and for lack of a better way to say it, stand up for yourself. We'll see how that turns out. Verse 3 goes on, and he says, for the children have come to birth, but there is no strength to bring them forth. What is that talking about? Well, literally, it's talking about a woman who is in labor bringing a baby into this world, but she just doesn't have the strength to go through the labor. She just doesn't. Well, what in the world is that talking? What does that have to do? And I think what it's referring to is Hezekiah had seen Judah come from a long ways. If you look at where they were at the beginning of his reign to where they are now, it's a night and day difference. And he said, we've come to this time where we're going to have the joy of giving birth to a child, but I just don't think we have the strength to do it. And you know, it's always right to go to God and say, God, this is just bigger than I am. And I can't do this on my own. I see the humility in that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So shows humility. Man, that's a very good quality when we are seeking the Lord. Humble. Usually unknown by kings and royalty. The James chapter 4 passage is, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, and He will lift you up. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. This is, I pray all the time. It's one of my repeated prayers. Lord, help me to recognize my pride. Have you noticed that people who are full of pride don't know it? Help me to recognize that I am proud, that I think too much of myself, and help me to take on the quality of humility. And I pray that all the time. So y'all have every right. I give you the right into my life. If I say something arrogant and prideful, tell me, because I want to know. Because I will say, yeah, I did. You're right. I'm sorry. And because I don't Pride goes before destruction. Okay, so next slide. Isaiah's words. So let's go to verses 6 and 7. And Isaiah said to them, "Thus you shall say to your master, thus saith the Lord, don't be afraid. Do not be afraid of the words which you have heard, with which the servants of the king of Assyria has blasphemed me. Surely I will send a spirit upon him, and he shall hear a rumor and return to his own land, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land." That's what's going to happen to the king of Assyria. So fear not. Verse 6. I threw in Isaiah 41:10, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." That's Isaiah's words in Isaiah 41. So faith overcoming fear. So God had heard. God does not have a deaf ear. There's not a word spoken that God does not know. There's not a word thought that God does not know. So God knew what was being said. And then verse 7 is a prophecy of the King Sennacherib's, the Assyrian king's downfall. It happens just like God said it would. Next slide. So here's just some more information here. The big war that was going on is do I have the map in that next? Yeah. So this helps me, and I can tell you everything that previous says. So all the green, see all that green? Well, the dark green is the Assyrian Empire before the days of Isaiah. The lighter green is the Assyrian Empire after the days of Isaiah. So during the days of Isaiah, which is around 700 BC, was the darker green turning into the lighter green. It was the Assyrian army invading. And the big war that was going on at this time was Assyria versus Egypt. And they're pretty big dogs in the world. And then you got this tiny little Judah in the middle. And what Assyria wanted Judah for was because it's the high ground of this area that turns into the low ground. So if they can hold the high ground, it can be a staging point for their invasion into Egypt. And they finally do win. They win the Assyrian-Egyptian War, which was around 7 something to 6 something. But anyway, you look it up on Google, it'll tell you the Assyrian-Egyptian Wars. It'll tell you that. Now, this is for the next one. Will you back up for me for a minute so I can get my thoughts back? Okay. So after the Assyrians were winning against Egypt, and after God, we hadn't got there yet in our study, but after God defeated the Assyrian army, Sennacherib and his buddies, his army, went home, just as God says here. He says he's going to go home in the same manner that he came. He's going to go home. He's going to hear a rumor. Now, the rumor may be that the Ethiopians, we're going to see that if we have time, the Ethiopians are going to join the war. But there's another writing in Assyrian history, and I'm going to just paraphrase it. So I'll just tell you what happened. I hate to give it away, but I think you know. 185,000 Assyrian soldiers died in one night just outside of Jerusalem. This is God's answer to Hezekiah's prayer. And the Sennacherib was not there when that happened. He was actually over on the Egyptian front. But when he got word of what happened, and he came and he saw all the corpses laying around, and there was absolutely no explanation for it. You know, they didn't get the flu. There wasn't an atomic bomb. There was no wounds on their body. This is language that was written in the Assyrian histories. There was no wounds on their bodies. How did they die? Well, we know God did. God spoke and they died. God said, life be gone, and it was. And so Sennacherib, it kind of, there were some other things going on, but it kind of sucked his air. And he gathered up his toys and he went home. He was winning. And he went home and he never came back. Because I think it was just a gut punch. And it was just like, oh. And I think he thought there was some voodoo stuff going on over there. He didn't know it was God, but he was like, I'm not going over to that land. 185,000 soldiers die in one night. I ain't going back over there. And then I think this is what verse 7 is telling us. I'm going to send a spirit upon him. And that could be a lot of things there. It could be a demonic spirit. And he shall hear a rumor. And when he hears that rumor, I can't tell you what that rumor is. Now, some of the books that I read after say it was when the Ethiopian king said he was going to join. But I just don't see the Assyrian king saying, oh, Ethiopians are coming? Okay. Bring them on. Join the party. Let's go. But there's something else about this rumor. And it's actually in the Hebrew, it just simply means message. I don't know if Isaiah went to him and told him. If we have no record of that. But he didn't come back. All right, next slide. Okay, I got 1 minute. We're going to stop right there. So where we'll pick up next time is with, so we've seen the response to the Rabshakeh's speech. King Hezekiah goes to God. He goes to Isaiah. Isaiah says, don't worry about it. Not going to happen. The messengers of Sennacherib go to Sennacherib, who is over on the southwest side on the Egyptian front. And he said, and I think what they said was, the Rabshakeh's speech didn't work. They're still getting ready for battle. So Sennacherib writes a letter, and that's where we'll pick up next week. Comments or questions? Okay, well let's do prayer requests, announcements. So I'll start with announcements first. You'll probably notice we're a little thin tonight. One of the reasons is a lot of our churches at Bud Creek Camp this week. So remember them as they are in Bud Creek Camp. You probably noticed that out in the foyer we have a table shower going on. This is for baby boy Graham. This is Brendan and Madison's baby boy who's coming August-ish. Y'all help me out. Somewhere around that time. It's in August, I think. So let's remember that and table shower. Let's welcome our new baby boy into this world. Tomorrow, senior adult game day, 2 to 4 p.m. And then the grounds committee will meet after the morning service on the 9th, this coming Sunday. And also at 2:30 that afternoon, there is a post-VBS meeting. Encourage you to look at your emails and get that link, which is kind of a little survey that goes along with what improvements can we make to make VBS better. So take notice of that and fill it out for us, and that'll give us some feedback in preparing for next year. And there will be a youth sponsors meeting, not this coming Sunday, but after the Sunday service of the 26th. Any other announcements? Hearing none, let's go to prayer request then. just some that I know about, I'll mention to you. Remember the Tom Ross family?